We were downwind for this, it would be pretty bad. My friend and I were a couple blocks away, and even then we could feel some of the smoke and some of the ash hitting our face, and it felt like, an ashy rain. It was pretty gross. Yeah,
it looked pretty significant on the views we were seeing as well. Carolyn Margolis, thank you very much for talking to us. As we noted, this is the seat of the Archdiocese of Paris, but a cathedral with such profound part of a history of the Catholic Church. George Weigel is our Vatican expert who often joins us for coverage of all things Vatican, but can offer a little perspective about the importance of Notre Dame. George, good to have you on.
Hi, Lester. It's a sad day, obviously. I'm really thinking about the beginning of that extraordinary television series Civilization by Kenneth Clark some 50 years ago. And the first shot in that series is Kenneth Clark standing in front of Notre Dame and saying, "I'm not sure I know how to define civilization, but I know I'm looking at it." President Macron talked about the great loss to the entire French nation. This is a loss to the entire world. This building, almost 1,000 years old, represents the human spirit at its noblest. The aspiration to goodness, to truth, to beauty. And to see it go up in smoke is a very, very heartbreaking thing, I have to say.
I noted that the Archdiocese of Paris that's the home church there. Is there a special responsibility with not only leading the church in a city like Paris, but to have that as your home?
Well, I think Notre Dame symbolizes over 1,500 years of Christian history in France. The building itself isn't that old, but it came to embody over the centuries the entire Christian experience in that part of Western Europe. And it's wonderful architecture and glass, I think, embodied the human spirit rising for something, seeking something nobler than our own self-aggrandizement, seeking something transcendent. Amazing that this should be happening in Holy Week, the center of the Christian liturgical year. I'm also thinking of my friend, the former Archbishop of Paris, Cardinal Jean-Marie Lustiger, who's buried in Notre Dame. An astonishing figure, child of victims of the Holocaust. Himself a convert to Catholicism, chosen by John Paul II, the son of Polish Jews, to be the Archbishop of Paris, who made that cathedral the center of his ministry for almost 20 years, and was a real light of reason and goodness and faith for all of the people of France, believers or not. So this is a real tragedy for everyone, and it extends beyond France, I think, to everyone who loves beauty and who loves truth.
Yeah, well said. George Weigel, thank you for speaking with us and giving us some historical perspective of this amazing cathedral in Paris. I want to go right back to Sarah Harmon right now in our London bureau. Sarah, what more can you tell us?
Well, Paris's deputy mayor says that first responders are now trying to salvage the art and the other priceless pieces that were stored in this cathedral. And Lester, the spire that we watched being destroyed is thought to have contained relics considered sacred to Catholics, including a relic believed to be from Jesus Christ's crown of thorns, relics from various saints. And we also know that the Paris prosecutor's office says it has started an inquiry into what caused this fire. A church official is saying the wooden interior of this 12th century landmark is burning, and he believes that as well is likely to be destroyed. So a tremendous scale of devastation as we watch this fire continue to burn. Over an hour since it started now.
Yeah, still going, but thankfully, at least from the vantage point from the outside, they appear to be getting somewhat of a handle on it, but still those brilliant flames now from the center of the cathedral. But looking here from the front, You can also see this, the smoke plume has died down considerably as darkness begins to creep over Paris. 8:30 in the evening there now, as we watch these live pictures of firefighters now getting water to the flames themselves. Clearly not an easy feat given the size and shape and height of that building. I think once one of the tallest structures in Paris before the Eiffel Tower.
And you mentioned nightfall. If you look at any guidebook about Paris, they will talk about the monuments that are lit at night, Sacré-Cœur, the Eiffel Tower, and of course, the view of Notre Dame after nightfall, all aglow in light, is one of the most spectacular sights anywhere. You know, you mentioned the Ile de la Cité, which is this island floating between the left and the right banks of the Seine. And if you're walking and you cross over the eastern end of the island, I think particularly at night, this cathedral, which is lit up, is just almost beyond words how beautiful it is. And now, of course, it's aglow in flames. And it's like a gut punch to think about what is being lost here.
Journalist Patrick Gailey is there right now. Patrick, how close are you to this, and what are you observing?
Hi there. I'm right on the banks of the river, the other side, because they've evacuated the island. So I'm probably about 90 meters away. I can see the rear of the two iconic towers, and just to the left from where I'm looking at it, I can see the hole of where the roof used to be and the spire used to be of Notre Dame.
Had you been in the cathedral yourself?
I have, yes, several times. I live here, so whenever sort of friends or family visit, it's a must-see, and especially if you climb up and you can look down and you get a sense of really how old the building is when you're there.
We're looking at the building, we're looking at the flames, but can you look around and tell me what it's like on the streets right now for Parisians and tourists alike to sit and to stand and watch this occur?
Yeah, certainly. So I was there the moment that the spire fell down. It was clear that it was going to come down because of the way the fire was going. There was a huge crowd gathered just outside the town hall, which is the other side of the river. And when the tower came down, there were people crying, gasps, shouts of disbelief. Now, as the evening sets in, I'm on the banks of the Seine. People are sat quietly taking photos. They're talking to their friends. Some people have opened bottles of wine, and they're just taking in a scene with a sort of quiet shock of disbelief.
And you mentioned you live in Paris, and this is the must-go-to place, I'm sure, when you have visitors.
Yeah, certainly. It's sort of right in the heart of the city. It's the one thing other than the Eiffel Tower that you can see no matter where you turn. And the area around Notre Dame, the Ile de la Cité, is the oldest part of Paris, one of the oldest parts of Paris, and it's got an extremely gorgeous surrounding area of a lot of very old original buildings. Notre Dame survived everything that Paris has ever been through, the wars, the revolution, the commune, but a lot of it is not there tonight.
Yeah. All right. Patrick Gailey, thank you, a journalist, for checking in and giving us your perspective. So much of the fabric of this city, and as he alluded to, it's had a rough history of vandalism and destruction and restoration, and anyone who knows just even a brief history of this place, I think, will have the confidence that it will rise again, or it will be restored to its glory again. But it's an awful shame that for a long time people will not be able to visit this amazing place.
I always thought of this not just as a beautiful place, which is very obvious, Lester, but also a very joyous place. There's a large square out front, as you know. There are always street performers there. There are the usual souvenir sellers, and you can get your water and your snack. But there are always large groups of people, families, couples. I can't even tell you how many times I've been walking across that square and someone has stopped me, a couple, would you mind taking our photo? It's just a very festive attitude. Even people who don't want to necessarily get in the line, depending on how long the line is, the whole atmosphere around there is just one of positivity and beauty and joyousness. I always loved, if I was anywhere near there, even if I wasn't going inside the cathedral, to pass around around it, to look at it, and to see the scene, which was very iconically French.
And also a place of national mourning at times. I recall several years ago being there as a mass was held in honor of those who died on Air France Flight 447 that had crashed after leaving Brazil. And, you know, it was a solemn place as we have ours, you know, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, but a place that where people would come to heal and to mark solemn moments. And that solemn moment now is what is happening at Notre Dame Cathedral. You can still see the glowing embers now from inside the church as the roof has been eaten away. You can also see the scaffolding I keep pointing out that traverses much of that rooftop. That was part of a restoration, rebuilding project that was underway, and I'm sure it will be among the first things to be looked at as a potential source of this fire. But for now, it's about trying to save. We understand the artwork, some pieces that can be saved from inside, and to save as much of this cathedral as is possible. Sarah Harmon, our NBC correspondent in our London newsroom, is continuing to monitor the feeds and information coming out of Paris. Sarah?
Yeah, salvaging that artwork has got to be a huge priority for emergency services right now. We also know France's prosecutor has begun an inquiry into the cause of the fire, and that scaffolding that you mentioned, Lester, is certainly going to be a key focus as they look into what caused this historic building to break out in flames. We know that the spire has completely collapsed, but a church official is also saying that the whole wooden frame of Notre Dame is also burning. That's obviously very disturbing to think that the fire has gotten down that far. This is the most popular monument in all of France. It's more popular even than the Eiffel Tower. A huge loss for the city, and one we don't even know the complete scale of yet.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Joining us on the phone now is Bishop Robert Barron of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Bishop Barron, thank you for joining us.
Lester, thank you. I'm just kind of devastated by this. I just got to L.A. I was in the car and just heard the news about this.
Yeah, tell us, you know, the historic significance for the Catholic Church of Notre Dame.
Well, it's extraordinary, and I have a very personal connection to it. I studied in Paris. I got did my doctoral work there, and every Wednesday, the 3 years I was there, I gave tours at Notre Dame. And so I lived about a 10-minute walk from there, and it was a very special place for me personally. For Catholics, it's of extraordinary significance. You know, it's the maybe surpassed in terms of beauty and integrity and all that, but of the Gothic Church is one of the most important, and it just sums up so much of the Catholic history and spirit. It's meant to symbolize the body of Christ, meant to symbolize the cross, which you can see in the design of the cathedral. This one has survived so much. It survived war and revolution and social change. That's what's so devastating as I look at these pictures that after 800 years, you know, to see it compromised this severely. And then those windows, there are so many windows from the 13th century in that building. And I'm you know, chagrined to think that they would be compromised. But,
and maybe you can enlighten us on the spire that we watched crash down a little while ago. I understand that it contains significant relics.
Well, you know, I'm supposing that when I was in Paris, the relics were in the Trésor, so-called, the treasury. I don't know if they're in that spire. That spire was constructed in the 19th century. It's very beautiful. I'm looking at it now burning, which is heartbreaking. It's very striking, but it was part of the 19th century renovation of Notre Dame. But much of that building is is authentically medieval, especially the windows, which are magnificent.
And there are a number of, I know, burial crypts inside the cathedral.
Yeah, sure. Bishops and the kings are buried up in Saint Denis, but yeah, we have bishops going back to the early Middle Ages buried there. But it's a spiritual center, you know, for Catholicism, but also I think for all of Europe, it's a spiritual center. And then from a cultural standpoint, as it was just said a few minutes ago, the most visited site in Paris, meaning one of the most visited sites in Europe. But it's heartbreaking as I look at these pictures, because I used to so often see Notre Dame there from the back. I would sit there by the Seine to read or to go for a walk, and it's the most magnificent sight overlooking the Seine. So it's devastating to me, personally, as well as to all Catholics.
Bishop Aaron, good to talk to you again. Thank you for joining us in our coverage here.
You're quite welcome.
President Emmanuel Macron of France says the fire that's consuming Notre Dame is taking part of everyone in France with it. President Trump is speaking about it. Now let's listen.
No cathedral. I think I could say there's probably no cathedral in the world like it. It's a terrible scene. They think it was caused by, at this moment they don't know, but they think it was caused by renovation. And I hope that's the reason. Renovation, what's that all about? But it's a terrible sight to behold. With that being said, I want to tell you that a lot of progress has been made by our country in the last 2.5 years. Hard to believe we're already starting to think about.
President Trump, and on a trip to Minneapolis, but before getting down to the business at hand, noting what we're all feeling is this the sense of sadness over what we're seeing from Paris. Notre Dame on fire right now, a significant fire that has destroyed a good portion of the roof, and we understand even the interior walls now are threatened. The flames dying down somewhat, but still easy to see as they continue to pour water on Notre Dame. 8:45 in the evening there. This broke out around, would have been around 7 o'clock Paris time this evening. Hallie Jackson is at the White House. Hallie, we heard a little bit about the president there. He had tweeted and now making these comments.
Yeah, talking about what a terrible fire this has been. Lester, as you mentioned, he is in Minnesota. He is there, and he was just beginning his remarks as we cut away from them on his tax law, trying to rally support for that. But clearly, what is capturing his attention is what is capturing the attention of so many people, not just in this country and in Europe, but around the world, this fire at Notre Dame as the night begins to fall there. We know that the First Lady, not only has the president been talking about this and has been made aware of this, but the First Lady was as well. She was briefed prior to remarks that she made to members of the military and their families down in Fort Bragg today. She has requested updates. We've also seen reaction from, for example, Vice President Mike Pence, from Ivanka Trump as well, the president's, of course, daughter and senior advisor. So clearly this is something that President Trump is watching. What we'll be waiting to find out is if and when he will reach out to his counterpart in France, Emmanuel Macron, to offer sympathy or support, for example. The president is tied up in a couple of different meetings and roundtables this afternoon, but that is something we are asking the White House about as well. So far, the State Department, of course, on top of this, they know this is happening, and we're looking to see any reaction from our embassies around the world, Lester.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thank you. And President Macron is said to be heading to the scene there in Notre Dame. He says he sees a part of us being on fire, meaning a part of France being on fire. Emmanuel Macron, again, on his way to the scene there. There's some more flame from the interior, but clearly we have seen less fire and less smoke. That's a great thing. Aaron Zelensky is with the works at the Daily Beast. He is in Paris right now. Aaron, can you tell us what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a chaotic scene here. The police have shut down 2 major metro stations, several bridges, several roads. It's very difficult to get too close. Even I'm a bit down the River Seine, even from a ways away, I can still see smoke coming from the cathedral and flames earlier as well, but those seem to have died down a bit.
Aaron, what was it like when word began to spread that Notre Dame was on fire? Aaron, you still with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it like? I don't know where you were when it broke out, but can you give us a sense what it was like as word rippled across Paris that Notre Dame was on fire?
Well, I live on the opposite side of the city, so it came through initially on news wires, and at first people didn't react too strongly. I mean, there was a trash can on fire, but then as the word got out that it was quite a major fire, there was some photos showing up on social media, a lot of shock and devastation, I would say. But this cathedral is an iconic symbol of the city, the way the Eiffel Tower is.
Yeah, there is such intense pride in this particular landmark, and it's a city with an overabundance of amazing and beautiful places. But this ranks at the top, I think, for a lot of people. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us, and joined now by Ann Thompson, NBC News correspondent here in the studio in New York. You have been there, I'm sure, a number of times.
Many times,
and what are your thoughts as you watch this? And what can you tell us?
You know, when I saw that spire collapse, all I could think of was it was like watching a dagger go through the heart of Paris. That is what Notre Dame is to that city. It is not just a cathedral for Catholics. It is a source of pride for all Parisians. And to see that spire fall is something we never thought, I certainly never thought I would ever see anything like this. I mean, when you think about this cathedral, it was built in 1160. It has survived all kinds of renovations. It was defaced during the French Revolution. And then tonight a fire takes it. I think what's equally amazing as we sort of watch these sickening pictures is at this point we have no reports of injuries. And Notre Dame traditionally closes at 6:45 at night, and that was just before this fire broke out. So it is amazing, and kudos to the people in the cathedral if they were able to get all the tourists out before anything happened. But you think of that building, and it's a wonderful way to see Paris. About a decade ago, I brought my nephew to Paris, and we went up the North Tower, and he was 15 years old. He loved the gargoyles. He thought those were pretty cool. I was fascinated with the rose windows. There are 3 of them in the cathedral. But the cathedral, aside from being the heart of the Catholic Church, there is also significant because there are 3 relics there, and apparently the 3 relics were in the spire that fell. And supposedly a piece of the crown of thorns that Jesus Christ wore on the day he was crucified, and that will be celebrated in the Catholic Church on Good Friday. That was one of the relics, as well as relics from St. Genevieve and St. Denis, 2 very important saints in the French Catholic Church.
A live picture of Notre Dame, the fire continuing to burn at the center of it, but clearly not at the level we had seen for the better part of an hour, as a heavy billow of smoke, a plume, rose up and across the city of Paris. We have seen pictures of the ground of people just standing there witnessing this with a sense of disbelief and sadness. And I think the French president spoke so well when he said it's a part of Paris, it's a part of France that they are losing tonight. Such a part of this city's identity. A city that's known a fair amount of tragedy. I noted earlier I had been there a few years back for the series of terror attacks, the Bataclan Theater, the target of that. There was before that the Charlie Hebdo terror attack. So it is a city that has known its fair share of tragedy and heartbreak over the last several years. Annalise Bourget from our partners Euronews is on the phone right now. Annalise, what can you tell us? Does it appear they're making progress?
Well, not exactly. We have seen over the last hour or so the roof of the cathedral virtually collapse in its entirety. I don't think there's anything left of the roof, at least from where I stand. I cannot see any single part of the roof. What I can see from here is that the flames are intensifying once again over the last 30 minutes or so. It started to burn once again from inside the church. The efforts of firefighters, and there are quite a few of them, of course, that have been deployed to the scene, seems to be in vain so far. And it is quite heartbreaking to see, not only from where I stand, but also from, of course, the perspective of the residents and the tourists alike. I have thousands of people around me right now who have been here standing in shock, watching as this monument, this very important and iconic symbol of the city, but of this entire country, burns right in front of their eyes.
Annalise, have you heard any indications or any word of potential injuries in this?
No, so far we have not have any reports of injured people. I spoke to a resident that lives nearby. She was quite concerned about her family, but so far authorities have not reported any injuries. We do understand that tourists were evacuated from the church quite quickly in the first signs of fire, and I spoke to a few tourists who were inside the church as the fire started, and they said the authorities were indeed very, very fast. But of course, we have yet to get a full report of just why this happened in the first place and just what is the cause of this fire and exactly how this has come to happen. We do understand that this church was under renovation, and there are some local channels here in France that have been reporting that this fire may have started as a consequence, as an accident within that process, that renovation work. But once again, no confirmation of the cause of the fire, nor if there are any injured.
Annalise, thank you. The roof gone there as the flames now continue to pour from the upper section of Notre Dame as nightfall is upon Paris. And on that note about the potential cause, we've received word that the Paris prosecutor's office has opened an official investigation to determine the cause of this fire, even as firefighters continue to suppress those flames. Let me go to Sarah Harmon right now. She's monitoring all this from our London newsroom, where we're taking in the bulk of our information. Sarah, what more can you tell us?
Hey, Lester. Well, our producer on the ground is saying, as you said, that the Paris prosecutor is opening an investigation, but also that prosecutor is at the scene along with the French president looking into the cause of the blaze. As we heard from Annalise, the fire continues to burn, and a key focus is going to be on that scaffolding. What role, if any, that played. We also know that first responders are trying desperately to salvage the art and the relics and the priceless pieces that were inside of Notre Dame. We also had earlier a cathedral spokesman saying this wooden interior in Notre Dame is burning. That is not a good sign when you think about the priceless pieces of art that are stored inside this building, that the fire has now reached that level, according to this cathedral spokesman. Lester.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. It took roughly 200 years to complete this cathedral, and even as we look at this immense destruction, when you look at the history of this place, you do get the sense of comfort. It'll be back.
You do. I mean, this is such an important structure to the people of Paris that it is not something that they are just going to let burn and diminish. It is as much a symbol of Paris as the Eiffel Tower, and it is a spiritual symbol of Paris, and a spiritual symbol to the world. You know, Annalise was talking about how the fires seem to be getting more intense. That may be because of that wooden interior, which is now fueling the flames. But it is stunning when you think so far that we have no injuries here. 30,000 people a day, Lester, go through this cathedral on very busy weeks, and this would have been one of them because it's Holy Week in the Catholic Church, where we will have Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and then, of course, Easter Sunday, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. At the end, you could get up to 50,000 people through that cathedral on a day like this.
And I have seen long lines there before to go up in the tower. And again, given the closing time and what we know about when this fire, thank goodness that tower should have been empty of people.
And that is, if there is a blessing in all of that, all of this, it would be that. But this scene is something like I don't think anyone in Paris has ever or could even imagine, even despite the history where this church has been a target, particularly during the French Revolution. But it is such a piece of the skyline of Paris, part of that city, that no one would ever think this could happen.
Yeah, you look to your left, and I think it's to your left. There's the Eiffel Tower, and then of course Notre Dame. Is the other two places that the people that tend to want to go first on their trips to Paris. An amazing place, an amazingly difficult firefighting effort, too, as well. As I've witnessed over the years of urban firefighting challenges, this appears to be a significant one here, given the roof is now given way, some of the interior walls themselves.
Right, and if people haven't been to Paris, what you may not know is that Notre Dame is actually on an island. There are these two little islands in the city of Paris, in the middle of the Seine, and Notre Dame is on one of them, and that just makes it all the more difficult. But talking to eyewitnesses today, they say what first people were shocked. They didn't quite understand what was going on. They were taking pictures, and now there's just kind of a stunned silence watching the destruction of this building.
So awful to see. Ann, thank you very much. Our Richard Engel will have a live report from Paris when I see it in a little while. For NBC Nightly News, we'll have continuing coverage on NBC News, our NBC News app. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News, New York. Good day.
We now join our regularly scheduled program already in progress. WYFF4, serving you with 9 translators.
If you could be someone else for the day.